Hello there, I'm Shane Griffith and I welcome you to the Public Housing Program. Together, we're going to explore some of the most important aspects of the Residential Lease Agreement, which is a document all residents must read, sign, and agree to uphold while living in public housing. While the terms of the lease primarily focus on the things that you cannot do while living in public housing, it is important to remember that they are designed to ensure that you have the safest and the best quality of life as possible. Please note that this video only explains the most important components of the lease. It is your responsibility to read and abide by the terms of the entire document. After viewing this video, a HACEP associate will be happy to answer any of your questions and explain the process that will occur if you or someone in your household does not follow the terms of the lease. So, in an effort to bring you up to speed and to explain why the lease is so important, sit back and relax as we present the Residential Lease Agreement, ensuring a high quality of life in public housing. The Housing Authority of the City of El Paso was established in 1938 to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing for low-income El Pasoans. Over the past 70-plus years, we have expanded our programs, staff, and services to effectively serve 40,000 residents. The Housing Authority is now the second largest in Texas and among the 20th largest in the United States. To put it this way, there are more than 3,100 public housing authorities in the country, which means we rank among the top 1% in size. With so many residents spread out all over the city, it is important that everyone who lives in a public housing community follow the terms of the Residential Lease Agreement. The lease is based on the policies that are outlined in the Admission and Continued Occupancy Policy, or ACOP, which is approved by the HACEP Board of Commissioners with the input of the residents. A copy of the ACOP is available for your review in every property manager's office and on the HACEP website at www.hacep.org. The objectives of the ACOP are as follows: to provide improved living conditions for very low and low-income families while maintaining their rent payments at an affordable level, to operate a socially and fiscally sound public housing agency that provides drug-free, decent, safe, and sanitary housing with a suitable living environment for residents and their families, to avoid concentrations of economically and socially deprived families in any one or all of HACEP's public housing developments, and to lawfully deny the admission of applicants or the continued occupancy of residents whose habits and practices reasonably may be expected to adversely affect the health, safety, comfort, or welfare of other residents, or the physical environment of the neighborhood, or create a danger to PHA employees. Let's take some time now to review some of the most important elements of the lease according to the following 10 sections: rent, rent redetermination, tenant obligation, visitors and parking, housekeeping, abandonment of unit and property, individual relief, work orders, criminal activity, and resident initiative. Rent is due by the first day of each month. Rent is late if it is not paid on or before the first of the month. This also includes any outstanding maintenance and other charges. In other words, if you pay the amount you owe each month for your unit on time, but do not pay for charges that you or individuals in your household incur due to maintenance damages, excess utility charges, or violations by the first of the month, then your collective rent payment will be late. If your rent payment is late more than 3 times within any 12-month rolling period, lease termination will proceed. In addition, you will be subject to a $10 late fee if you submit your late rent payment after the 11th day of the month. In order to avoid late payments and late fees, HACEP is proud to offer you 2 convenient ways to pay your rent. The first is through automatic bank withdrawal. By filling out an automatic bank withdrawal authorization form that is available in your property manager's office, you give HACEP permission to deduct the exact amount of rent that you owe automatically from your bank account. Please note that you must have sufficient funds in your account when HACEP makes the withdrawal, which occurs every month on the same date. If you do not have sufficient funds in your account, you will be disqualified from using this convenient service, and your rent for that month will be considered late. The other convenient way to pay your rent is through image direct deposit, or as we call it, IDD machines that are set up in your property manager's office. Simply stop by the office anytime during normal business hours, and your property manager will gladly receive your rent payment in the form of a check or money order. Your payment will then be processed through the IDD machine, and will instantly post to your account. Each year, HACEP requires that all public housing residents to verify your continued qualification in the public housing program and to adjust the amount of subsidy that you receive through the federal government based on any changes to your annual income. This process is known as rent redetermination. Similarly, if changes to your income or to your family composition should change prior to the annual recertification, the lease states that residents must report these within 10 calendar days to the property manager. This process is known as an interim. The lease states, quote, "If tenant is found to have misrepresented the facts upon which the rent is based so that the rent tenant is paying is less than the rent that he or she should have been charged, HACEP shall apply an increase in rent retroactive to the first of the month following the month in which the misrepresentation occurred. Additionally, HACEP may report these facts to federal authorities for prosecution." In other words, if you do not report all of your income, changes to your income, or all of the people living in your unit, HACEP will find out and hand your case over to our fraud department, where you will not only be responsible for the back payments, you may also face criminal penalties. We'll talk more about this later. The fact is, we need to make sure that everyone pays their fair share so that we can help as many people as possible who are requesting housing assistance. In addition, all adults over the age of 18 are required to sign a lease in order to live in public housing. This is to ensure that everyone, and not just the head of household, understands the terms of the lease. Tenants also have the option to participate in what is called a flat rent. This means that a predetermined amount of rent will be charged to the tenant based at the time of the initial rent redetermination assessment. This rent will remain static for 3 years, at which point your income will be re-verified. The advantage here is the convenience that HACEP will verify your income once every 3 years rather than at least once every year. Since the amount of federal subsidy that each tenant receives increases as the amount of that tenant's yearly income decreases, it provides a disincentive for some families to work. For this very reason, HACEP offers an earned income disallowance. What this means is that if a person in the household gets a job and was previously unemployed, the increase to your income won't affect your subsidy in the first year. In the second year, only 50% of your increased earnings will be applied to your rent calculation, and by the third year, the full amount of your increased income will be applied. For those folks who don't have any income, a zero income process must be followed in which your income will be reviewed every 30 days. In addition, a minimum monthly rent will be applied, which at the time of this video's production is $25. The minimum rent, of course, is subject to change. As we mentioned before, HACEP's mission is to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing to assisted families living at or below 80% of area median income. The most important part of our mission is evident in the first word: to provide safe housing. This next section of the video will explain the various parts of the lease that tenants must follow so that HACEP can confidently fulfill this vital element of our mission. Playground equipment. The installation and use of privately owned playground equipment, including swing sets, trampolines, and swimming pools, is prohibited on all HACEP properties. In addition, playground sets are often left in disrepair that pose a hazard and an eyesore to others. Because these items are frequently in a state of disrepair, they lead to point reductions when the federal government inspects the quality of our units in its periodic assessment. Therefore, it is very important that HACEP earns high performance status each year so that we are eligible for additional streams of federal funds, which we will then reinvest back into our public housing communities. Use of barbecue grills. The important thing to remember for this item is to not use barbecue grills in any manner which may create a fire hazard. Also, only charcoal grills are permitted. Tenants may not use or store propane grills or devices at any time for any reason on HACEP property. This is because the propane tanks are a hazard due to the possibility of explosion, leaking gas, and trash when they are not used, stored, or disposed of properly. This also results in major point reductions on our federal inspections. Smoke detectors. The smoke detectors that are installed in your unit are the most important device to ensure your safety. Therefore, all tenants are responsible for keeping working batteries in each smoke detector. Also, you are responsible for replacing dead, non-functioning, or missing batteries and installing new ones. Tenants are required to immediately report the defective condition of any smoke detector to the management office. Any person in the household or guest determined to have tampered with, destroyed, or removed batteries from any smoke detector will be charged an administrative fee of $150. Any second offense will result in termination of the lease. Before we proceed, let's take a moment to review some basic fire safety tips. The smoke detectors are designed to warn you of smoke so that you can safely evacuate your unit in the event of a fire. However, if you've ever heard the expression that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, then you'll know that it is best to prevent fires from occurring in the first place. Therefore, make sure you extinguish all candles before going to bed, completely extinguish cigarettes and place the butts in the proper receptacle, and do not leave food cooking on the stove unattended, especially when cooking with oil. Tenant may not install or store any major appliance, including, but not limited to, cooking stoves, wood-burning stoves or fireplaces, refrigerators, freezers, dishwashers, washing machines, clothes dryers, ceiling fans, satellite dishes, or cable hookups without prior written approval of HACEP. Tenant may not cause any hole to be made in any wall for the purpose of installing any appliance, electronic equipment, or any other device. Unauthorized appliances, equipment, or devices shall be removed by HACEP at tenant's expense. The reason for this rule is that HACEP has had too many tenants storing major appliances in units with covered patios or garages that create a perfect haven for rodents and insects. HACEP has also experienced costly damage to units from tenants who tried to install these big items on their own. Please be sure that you request and receive written approval from your property manager prior to acquiring, storing, or installing any major appliance in your unit. If not, then you will face costly charges and fees from HACEP. Pets. If you are an animal lover and would like to have your trusty companion live with you, then you must be sure to fill out the HACEP Pet Policy Agreement. This policy is designed to ensure the safety of you, your neighbors, and HACEP staff so that we collectively prevent the presence of hoarding, vicious and aggressive animals, or even exotic animals. The most important thing to know is that tenants can only have either one cat, one dog, one bird cage, or one aquarium. Dogs cannot exceed 25 pounds or 15 inches in height and are only permitted in units with individually secured and enclosed private yards. Of course, exceptions are granted for folks who have a disability and require the use of an assistance animal, which are governed separately by HACEP's Assistance Animal Policy. Your property manager will be happy to provide you with copies of both policies and answer any questions you may have. Community service. Just so you know, Section 512 of the Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act of 1998, which amends Section 12 of the Housing Act of 1937, established the requirement for non-exempt residents of public housing who are 18 years of age and older to contribute 8 hours of community service each month or to participate in a self-sufficiency program for 8 hours each month. What this means is if you live in public housing and do not have a job, then you have to perform at least 8 hours of community service each month. Exceptions to this requirement are granted for folks over the age of 62, persons with disabilities, full-time students, primary care providers, or tenants who participate in a HUD-sponsored self-sufficiency program. If you are a non-exempt resident of public housing over the age of 18 and do not perform your 8 hours of community service per month, then you face the risk of lease termination. While community service sounds punitive in nature, the purpose here is to empower residents to take control of their own lives and take pride in maintaining their own community. This can range from groundskeeping, volunteering, and even cleaning. The Community Services Department offers a full range of self-sufficiency programs as well that are available to all residents. For a full list of community service opportunities, please contact your property manager. Parking. All tenants who own a vehicle and wish to park it on HACEP property must have a parking permit. Permits may be obtained through the property manager's office, and all permits must be renewed during recertification. Also, each household may only have a maximum of 2 vehicles. The parking permit application requires that each vehicle have current registration and license fees paid to the county and state. A third-party towing service patrols each public housing community and will tow those vehicles that do not conform to the parking policy at the owner's expense. Some of the other details to this very important policy include the following. Parking permits must be displayed on all authorized vehicles at all times. Vehicles must not leak fluids such as oil or gasoline on the pavement. If a vehicle does leak fluids, the tenant will be responsible for the cleanup of the fluids and any costs incurred by HACEP to clean up the fluids, including pavement repair. Also, only emergency repairs such as changing a tire or replacing a battery may be conducted in the parking lot. The washing of vehicles, to include motorcycles, is not allowed on HACEP property. Commercial vehicles, trailers, motorhomes, and buses owned or used by tenants may not park in community parking lots. Motorcycles must be parked in an improved and designated parking space. Unauthorized and/or improperly parked vehicles are subject to removal at the owner's expense. This includes blocking an access, yellow curbing, fire lanes, and so forth. The towing company and a phone number where the vehicle was taken to are posted at the entrance of the parking lot. Any vehicle may be removed by HACEP without prior notice to the tenant in an emergency situation, including situations requiring access or egress by police, fire, and other emergency vehicles, or leaking a fluid that presents a hazard or threat to persons or property. A vehicle displaying an expired registration insignia or an invalid vehicle inspection certificate may be removed. Guests and visitors. HACEP is committed to ensuring that our residents enjoy the highest quality of life as possible and recognizes that life is best enjoyed in the company of others, especially family and friends. Therefore, the residential lease agreement makes special accommodations for family members and friends who wish to visit our tenants, but in a manner that does not infringe upon the privileges that are provided for other tenants. Therefore, HACEP has designed the difference between a guest and a visitor, where they are to park, and for how long they can stay. A guest is a person allowed by any family member to stay overnight for not more than 14 days per 12-month period. A visitor is a person allowed by any family member to enter the unit but is required to park outside the premises after 10 p.m. on the same day of visit. Guest parking is only allowed in spaces designated for guest parking, and visitor parking is only allowed in spaces designated for visitor parking. Visitors and/or guests are not allowed to park in tenant parking spaces. If no guest or visitor parking is available in a community parking lot, guests and visitors must park on the street outside of the community. Unauthorized vehicles are subject to removal at the owner's expense. In parking lots where visitor parking is available, visitors' vehicles must be removed from the community by 10 o'clock. Any vehicle parked after that time is deemed to be an unauthorized vehicle and subject to removal. Overnight parking may be authorized by pre-approval of the community manager and only if guest parking spaces exist. A parking permit application must be submitted and signed by tenant or guest before parking is authorized. Approved guest vehicles must display the permit at all times. Tenants are not allowed to sublet, transfer, exchange, or loan their assigned space, decal, sticker, or permit to other tenants. Please note that HACEP, at its discretion, may decide to use a vehicle immobilization device in lieu of towing for any vehicle found in violation of the aforementioned procedures. That means that HACEP will put a device on the wheel of a vehicle that prevents the driver from driving it. It can be removed, but only after the fine is paid. I know, we just went through a lot of points on parking and guests, but these two topics are important components of apartment life. These rules are designed to ensure the highest quality of life for all residents, and your property manager will be happy to go through them with you in greater detail. HACEP tries its best to ensure that we uphold our pledge to not only provide safe housing, but also decent housing. In this respect, HACEP requires the assistance of all of our public housing tenants to keep their units clean and pest-free. Your property manager will provide you with a copy of the housekeeping standards. These standards identify the conditions in which the interior and exterior aspects of your unit are to be maintained. Inspections will be conducted by your property management team and will occur at least once per year. Repeated failure or refusal to maintain your unit according to the housekeeping standards will result in the termination of your lease. We cannot underscore the importance of your cooperation in this regard, as most of the housekeeping standards are simply good common sense. For instance, if you take out your trash and keep your walls, floors, ceilings, doors, bathrooms, porches, and windows clean and in proper operating condition, then you should have no problem passing the housekeeping inspection. You are also responsible for maintaining the landscaping around your unit, which includes mowing the lawn, removing weeds and trash, and trimming hedges and shrubbery. Your property manager will be happy to lend you hand tools located in the maintenance shed. Also, please note that HACEP pays a local pest control company to treat all interior units at least once per year in order to keep insects, rodents, and critters outside where they belong. Occasionally, however, pests do infiltrate units, especially those from folks who do not follow the housekeeping standards as previously mentioned. Due to the importance of pest control, no tenant of public housing has the right to refuse access to their unit for pest control. Refusal or repeated rescheduling of pest control services will result in the termination of your lease. In order to make this as convenient as possible, advance notice will be provided to you prior to the treatment of your unit. Please note that you have the responsibility to report any instance of infestations, most especially for bed bugs. Also, HACEP would greatly appreciate if you could move items and furniture away from your walls so that the pest control technician can quickly treat all areas of your unit. Maintenance charges. Your property manager will provide you with a schedule of maintenance and other charges. This document identifies the costs that are associated with damages to dwelling units that are caused by tenants or unreported instances of normal wear and tear. For example, if you lock yourself out of your unit, HACEP will charge you $60 during the day and $90 after business hours to let you back in. This schedule also identifies charges corresponding to 3 levels of violations. Level 1 violations incur a penalty of $50, Level 2 violations are $100, and Level 3 violations are $150. Also, some repairs entail labor and material charges, in addition to an administrative fee. Please read this document carefully so that you, your family, and your guests are fully informed of these charges. Although this item is not mentioned in your lease, HACEP highly recommends that you explore the option of acquiring renter's insurance. Renter's insurance is very affordable and will protect your valuable possessions within your unit in the event that they are destroyed by fire, flood, or stolen by reimbursing you for the full replacement cost. There have been occasions when fires and floods resulted in the total loss of tenants' possessions. Since they did not have a renter's insurance policy, they were not reimbursed for the loss of their personal property. Renter's insurance is an excellent way to protect you and your family if a disaster should occur and is easily obtained by contacting a major insurance company. From time to time, some tenants decide to simply walk away from their unit, stop paying rent, and leave their belongings behind. This is called abandonment. HACEP naturally provides exceptions for members of the military who are called up to active duty and serve overseas. However, notice must be provided to your property manager in advance if all occupants will be absent from the dwelling unit for more than 7 consecutive days. If HACEP determines that the tenant is not temporarily absent and after all efforts to contact the tenant have been exhausted, that tenant's unit will be deemed abandoned and the tenant's lease will be terminated. If any possessions are left behind in the abandoned unit, HACEP will store those items for 30 days, send a notice via certified mail to the tenant's last known address, and then sell the belongings at a public auction to pay for the storage costs and any outstanding charges incurred by the tenant. HACEP will then send the remaining proceeds, if any, to the tenant's last known forwarding address. In order to avoid this unpleasant experience, please be sure to inform your property manager if all tenants of your unit will be away for at least 7 consecutive days. Depending on the type of public housing unit you call home, you may receive what is called a utility allowance. A utility allowance is essentially a predetermined amount of money that HACEP will pay a tenant each month in order to help that tenant cover the cost of utilities including electricity, water, and gas. When tenants consume more energy than is covered by their utility allowance, then the tenant must pay the difference to the utility company. In some instances, however, there are legitimate reasons why a tenant consumed more energy than was provided in the utility allowance, such as faulty appliances, defects to meters, mistakes in reading the meter, or special needs of a resident household member. In order to seek individual relief, tenants must notify their property manager within 20 calendar days of receiving the bill. An inspection of the unit will occur within 10 calendar days of receiving